Hey guys, this is Gerry reporting for Kids First. Now, cinema exists in many forms, but the most development, the most expression, the most art, the most evolution takes place in independent cinema. And for that reason, we are at Film Independence 2020 Spirit Awards, where we're going to meet some of the finest independent filmmakers from around the world. Let's see who we can meet. You are balancing a very serious subject, but also working with child actors. How do you ensure that the plot and the message comes through while keeping the actors comfortable?
Well, Noah Jupe's coming here, so you should talk to him a little bit because he's the one that made it all possible together with his mother, Katie, who was really just such a big help for me in all of this. And I think a lot of the times what we see in these films is this idea that you have to manage the child and get him to do what you want him to do without really including him emotionally in the decisions. It was really important for us and for Shia specifically, who wrote this about it being a child actor, to make the whole process a lot more inclusive to the child and see where are his boundaries and what does he feel comfortable with, and really speak about everything and rewrite the script sometimes if we need to. So that was really what led us.
You play such complex characters that often have deep problems or are going through very compelling situations that none of us can even imagine.
Thank you.
So, what is your process for figuring out these characters and bringing them to the big screen?
I follow the writing. I'm first attracted to the script and to the writing, and it's so important. And if I don't have that, I don't have anything to build on. So for me, this was easy. This particular performance wasn't easy, but I had an incredible script written by Alex Ross Perry, our director, and he did a lot of the work for me. Yeah.
Right now with Azhy Robertson from Marriage Story. How are you doing today?
Good, how about you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. So the film deals with some very serious stuff.
Yes.
You, as an actor who's kind of in the background of it but still suffering from it, how do you ensure that you can kind of incorporate that into your role?
Well, Henry, he's trying to ignore the divorce, but naturally he really can't. So, in my performance, I tried to seem a little bit oblivious, but I still wanted to make the audience feel that that I sort of knew what's going on.
Well, your performance really shows you did an amazing job in the film. And what was it like to work with Noah Baumbach on set?
It was amazing. He's such a great director. He directed such really amazing movies like The Squid and the Whale. It feels like I got a Harvard's worth of knowledge from him of directing, or if that makes sense.
And you personally, what film made you get into filmmaking, getting into acting?
What film?
Yeah.
Huh. I mean, it wasn't really a film. It was kind of I used to watch a lot of plays, which is why, and then I joined a workshop in a very small theater place. I think plays are sort of the things that motivated me to go into acting.
Now a very tough question. What's your favorite play?
Oh. Either Hamilton or Ain't Too Proud.
Right now we're with Kelvin Harrison Jr., who is nominated for Best Male Lead for his role in Luce. And congratulations on the nomination. So your character in Luce, it's very three-dimensional, very complex, but he's also young, he's youthful, he's a high school student. So how do you incorporate all those aspects into the role and research for the role? Because he's also from a war-torn country, he's had a very rushed childhood. It's a lot of aspects to one character. How do you balance all of that?
It's just you do it one step at a time. I think what I did was I first wanted to research what those countries looked like and what psychologically would happen and what would the trauma therapy look like, into seeing how he would kind of transfer himself into this new space. And then I wrote the paper in the movie, so it was reading the books, it was reading Fans Fanah and Black Skin, White Mask and Wretched of the Earth. It was getting a dialect coach, and knowing what the accent would have been and how it would have transferred into what he is now. It was spending time with Naomi and Tim and kind of really understanding what the family dynamic would be. It's all these specific little things, so I would kind of go my little checklist and be like, this is what I need to do for this week. This week. I didn't really have that many weeks, so it became consolidated into days, but it's just doing the work.
And I'd also love to know, because the character is so complex and the story around him is so complex and moral specifically, what do you think specifically that the audience should get from the film as a message?
I think it's whatever you want to take from the movie. I think it's more so a movie where you bring a lot of your own baggage into it, and you start to kind of say, well, how do I see the world? How do I see Luce? And why do I see Luce this way? It's about asking ourselves questions and coming upon those answers ourselves. And it's not so much trying to tell us what to think. It's about trying to get us to think, because a lot of us we get lazy, you know? So yeah.
What's the hardest part of the filmmaking process for Clemency?
I would say that the hardest part was raising the finances to make this film, which is very often the case with true independent cinema, where you're telling challenging tales instead of unknown perspectives. So it took us a few years to get that together. And then fortunately we found some bold producer financiers in Ace Pictures who really believed in the vision and wanted to support female-centric stories and female filmmakers. And so here we are.
Now, on the producing side, independent cinema must be extremely hard because you are constrained on resources, on budget, on acting, on many, many different roles. So for starting filmmakers who have to start independent, what tips would you give them?
Well, I think like actually making anything is actually difficult. So whether it's independent film or a big budget movie, it's just different kinds of problems. I think for young filmmakers starting out, it's just trust your voice. Look to say something in what you're making, and put everything you have into it. And I think at the end of the day, you have something that you can be proud of, and as long as that's the case, then it will resonate with audiences.
And I would say around the practicalities of filmmaking and limited resources, it's like preparation and being organized is essential, because if you do a ton of preparation beforehand, even if you've got like 3 or 5 days to do something, let's say a short, I mean, we did this feature film in only 17 days, so even that, but it's like if you really are prepared and you sort of like see it and know exactly what you're going to do beforehand, you can go out and bang it out. And I would say for any filmmaker, any sort of aspiring filmmaker or filmmaker, just get out there and do it. Get out there, learn from your mistakes, cobble together a group of people that just want to go and learn and do things.
Now, 17 days, that is an exceptionally impressive time for film. I often know that it can be a month, 2 months, 3 months, but 17 days, congratulations. That is an achievement in itself. And I have one last question, and that is about the 17 days. So would you say that if you do such a short production time, is pre-production and post-production longer? Would you say that all aspects of production are shorter?
I think it's all proportional. So if you have a 17-day shoot day, it probably means that you only have so much money, and so prep and post are just as short.
Just as short.
So
that's
like
right.
prep was we had 8 weeks before we started shooting, and then post, actually the director and editor, we had finished shooting end of March, and by Independence Day we had a lock picture. So they moved fast.
And I think it was one full month of true prep.
Right.
And then sort of a smaller team, we had sort of an extra month. But yeah, and it was all, again, all part of that efficiency and planning, particularly by the filmmaker and I'd say the producers, to sort of know exactly what our plan was going to be going into that.
Right now with the filmmakers and the creators of See You Yesterday. How are you guys doing?
Good, awesome, so glad to be here.
Wonderful.
That is wonderful. So something I love about the film is it deals with real issues that we need to address today in society, but it does it in a way that seems entertaining. It seems like it can be watched by anybody. It doesn't have to be watched by adults who are interested, but any individual. So in making the film, how did you ensure that the audience is universal but the message still comes across?
Lots of trial and error, and we pitched it around. We did a lot of table reads. We just be honest with it and earnest with it, and we don't hide the truth.
Yeah, I think it was really important to both of us to tell this story in a very authentic way, and to bring forth the light on young black kids that are different from what we often see. And so I think in staying true to that, it was a way in which other people, all audience, to kind of come into the film and kind of still understand it and really enjoy it.
Now, the story of the film, sadly, a part of it we have seen a lot in today's real world, but another part, time traveling, we don't see. So how did you come up with that idea to combine those two factors in the story?
Back to the Future has always been my favorite film, and it was a summertime. I was working on the script, and it was summer of 2014 where Eric Garner got murdered, and I decided to, make a story of time travel and police killing. Just merge genres together.
So your film is nominated for the John Cassavetes Award, which means it is made under $500,000. That is extremely small for a feature film. So what challenges and what ideas did you come up with in order to keep the budget down?
Which ones didn't we, is what I would like to say. We leaned a lot into friends and family and favors and just kind of using our ingenuity, I think, to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, shoestring budgets are never easy to make, but they're fun to make. There's a different energy that comes along with making that kind of film. It is filmmaking by any means necessary, so you do lean into a lot of, easy fixes in terms of, friends, family, and, certain, levels of permitting from unions, things like that. So, it's a tough process, but usually, like I said, the energy is usually really great.
I'm sure, and I also would like to know, for young filmmakers who are working very tight budgets like you guys were, what tips would you give them to make their films a reality?
Now, are you referring to me as a young filmmaker? I'm kidding.
I was like, I am.
You go first.
Oh, I would say prep. I think you can save yourself a lot of time if you are well prepared, because you have to prepare for the film itself, you have to prepare for contingencies and any disasters that might come. I think that'll save you a lot if you're prepared ahead of time.
I would say, and I give this advice a lot, I mean, I make a lot of these films that are under $500,000 or under $1 million, and I get calls from filmmakers all the time going like, you can make my film, I would love for you to make my film, and I always tell them, don't find the people who can make your film, find the people who want to make your film, and if you work with a team of people who want to make your film, you can make it for next to nothing. So, yeah.
Now, something that fascinated me about your film is that it is not in a very common language. It is not in Spanish, correct?
It's in the Quechua dialect language that we have in Peru.
And what made you decide to choose a local dialect instead of an internationally known language?
We were supposed to do that project in Spanish, and we wrote that whole script in Spanish. And we were there in the Andes working with my actors. One day we were rehearsing and we were playing around, and we said, why don't we do this scene in Quechua, which is the local language of the Andes of Peru. And some magic just happened. And then I realized that actually the mother tongue of my three main actors was Quechua. So little by little we started doing more scenes, and something real happened, and they were doing their scenes from the gut, from their heart, and not from their head. And I remember I went to my producer and said, let's do the whole film in Quechua. And she said, are you mad? Are you out of your mind? We already shooting in spaces where there's 4,200 meters above sea level. It's going to be very tough. How are we going to direct? Everybody from the team doesn't know Quechua, no? So actually it was the idea of my protagonist to say, why don't we do a showcase in Spanish? We do 3 scenes, and then we will do another 3 scenes in Quechua. We bring all the team and let them be the judge of that. So we did it, and everybody said, oh my God, this is so amazing, we have to do it in Quechua. So then we brought 2 amazing interpreters to work through the whole creative process, and little by little we did it in Quechua.
I think that's incredible that you're able to do it in a local language. And I'd also like to ask, what do you have in your hands right here?
Yes, this is a real retablo from the Andes of Peru. This is the craft that is practiced in the Andes of Peru, and retablo is a story about love between a father and a son. And the father is a storybox maker, and is training his son to be the next storybox maker of the Andes until he discovers a secret, and he has to decide whether he continues the craft or not. And that's the film what's about.
I really love the story of the film. So could you tell the audience a quick synopsis of the film, and also how you came up with the story, because I think it's really original.
Thank you. So it's a day in the life of a young man who drives transport for people with disabilities in Milwaukee, and there's unrest in the city that leads to a protest, and he's got to pick up a young African-American woman in a wheelchair on the west side of town, his grandfather and 10 octogenarian Russian friends have a ride canceled to a funeral, and they talk him into taking them along. And it ensues from there, and it's a little bit of a love story. In the course of the day, the young woman and the driver bond.
It's a road movie. It's a love story. It's a tragic comedy. But actually, kudos to you. I'm amazed at how beautifully you summed it up, because at the end of this journey, I can't sum it up for the hell of it. I really, I
We've
don't
had
know
a
how
lot
you
of
do.
practice, but
Yes.
and it came about Krill. Actually, that was one of his first jobs when he came to America from Moscow. And he would tell me stories about it when we were trying to figure out this way into making a film about contemporary Milwaukee. And his stories were hilarious and wonderful. I don't think any of them got in the movie, tragically. but that's how it came about.
And in the editing process, because this is a film with a lot of events going on, but you're also taking place in one place. It's following the ambulance or the transportation the entire way through. How do you ensure that you can see this entire world going around the characters, but also keep the story entertaining, keep it compelling?
The editing was a journey within a journey, and for me it was probably one of the most challenging editing exercises in my life. I will quit saying that I will never have anything more difficult than this, because every time I do, something more challenging comes along. Right, exactly. But yeah, it was the idea was to find a film within the body of the footage that we had after, and essentially we were underfunded, and we didn't have enough days to honor the script, so we have to do our best, and best we did. And my job as an editor was to find a movie within this body and to make it as entertaining as possible. And we didn't want to just make a movie. We want to make sure that we have a movie that is distributed. And
a movie that would last,
would
that
last,
people
of
would
course,
watch
yeah,
20 years from now.
Yeah,
So-
but editing is just a job to make sure that my job was not to get in the way of the movie that was there, and that can sum it up.
Well, guys, the event is over. We met so many incredible filmmakers, actors, and more. Make sure to check out all the films covered here and to check out our other film reviews as well as our coverage of Film Independence, other event, Directors Close-Up, where we get one-on-one with many of the greatest directors from around the world making the greatest films this year. I'm your host, Gerry Orr, signing off. Bye.